What's the difference between a question that shuts down thinking and a question that opens possibilities? Most leaders ask the wrong kind without realizing it. Questions designed to find reasons why something won't work instead of exploring space within constraints. Today, I'm teaching you how to ask questions that unlock possibilities others miss. Welcome to the Deliberate Leaders Podcast. Let's start with how most questions function in leadership. When someone brings you a challenge, your brain immediately generates questions. Can we afford this? Do we have time? What if it fails? Who's going to do this? These feel like strategic questions. They're actually what I call shutdown questions. Questions designed to assess feasibility by finding constraints. And constraints are real. You do need to know what's affordable, realistic, and achievable. But here's the problem. Shutdown questions stop thinking at the boundary of what seems possible right now. Strategic questions work differently. They don't ignore constraints. They explore space within constraints you assumed were fixed. Let me show you the difference. Shutdown question. Can we hire someone for this role? Strategic question. What would have to be true to make this role unnecessary? Shutdown question. Can we afford this investment? Strategic question. What would have to be true for this investment to pay for itself? Shutdown question. Do we have time for this project? Strategic question. What would we have to stop doing to create time for what matters most? See how the questions change the thinking? Shutdown questions accept your current constraints as fixed. Strategic questions challenge whether those constraints are actually immovable or just assumptions you haven't examined. This is the core of what I call hidden assumptions, constraints you treat as facts when they're actually beliefs you haven't tested. And here's what's expensive. You make decisions based on these hidden assumptions without realizing they're there. Your entire strategic direction gets shaped by boundaries you never consciously chose. Let me give you an example. We can't scale without venture capital sounds like a fact, but it's actually an assumption about what scaling requires. Challenge that assumption. What would have to be true to scale profitably? And suddenly you're thinking about margin improvement, pricing strategy, operational leverage, customer targeting, completely different direction. We can't attract top talent at our budget sounds like a constraint. But ask, what would have to be true for top talent to want to work here regardless of salary? Now you're thinking about culture, mission, growth opportunities, flexibility, ownership, different conversation entirely. We don't have time for strategic planning, sounds reasonable, but ask, what are we spending time on that isn't moving us forward? Now you're questioning whether your current work deserves the time it's consuming. This is the skill, learning to question your constraints before they become conclusions. Most leaders accept their constraints and ask, what's possible within these limits? Strategic leaders ask, which of these limits are actually movable? Here's what this looks like in practice. Before accepting a constraint, ask, is this a fact or an assumption? Before saying we can't, ask, what would have to be true for us to? Before deciding something's impossible, ask, who's already doing this? And what's different about their situation? Before giving up on an idea, ask, what's the smallest version of this we could test? These questions don't guarantee success, but they guarantee you're not limiting yourself with assumptions you never examined. The shift is this. The most valuable skill in leadership isn't having answers. It's asking questions that challenge invisible boundaries. Because here's what I've learned in 3 decades of coaching. The leaders who see possibilities others miss aren't smarter. They're better at questioning the constraints others accept as facts. The executive edition of Think First includes the complete question framework, how to surface hidden assumptions and unlock possibilities in any situation. Reserve your copy at deliberatedirections.com/thinkfirst. Because the right question is worth 1,000 answers.